Am I using Rahul Gandhi as a touchstone to test the mettle of the society in which I live, the country to which I belong proudly, gladly, gratefully? Why have I decided to highlight some of the humane and lovable aspects of this young man, about which I kept quiet for a very long time, almost a quarter century? And why have I broken silence now? This question has been raised by not one but by several people who happened to see the video I produced on Rahul Gandhi, and that was followed up with a couple of videos on Sonia Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi. I took this decision after a lot of deliberation, realizing fully well that two consequences were almost bound to happen. One, my motive could be grossly misunderstood, and mercenary calculations may be ascribed to my doing what I am doing, in spite of the fact that if I had any ambition or political calculation, I would have stayed on in Delhi and would not have disappeared into the environment of insignificance that I voluntarily embraced in my homeland and my home state. The second consequence is that I would invite, for no rhyme or reason, or certainly no profit to myself, the wrath of the opposite camp, which is only natural given the fact that the society is politically so polarized and attitudes have hardened over time. So I was taking a calculated risk, if you like. I was doing a gamble. The question therefore is why? Why did I choose to do that? And that question needs to be now addressed by me for a very, very clear reason, which again I need to state. When I did the video on Rahul Gandhi nearly 3 weeks ago, I didn't have the wildest or slightest expectation that so many will actually care to see it. I don't even run a YouTube channel. Mine is a very small, humble assemblage of people, though in the cyberspace. We're a tiny community of like-minded people who have no access to grind, who have no agendas to ply, who have no political loyalties, no political expectations or agendas. We are a free people, and we are happy to be so. So, I thought I would share this video, the contents of that video, with this small group of people. The total membership of my YouTube channel at that time was about 7,000, or a little less than 7,000. And what is that compared to the subscriptions that other YouTube channels enjoy, numbering millions? Say, a young person like Dhruv Rathi has a YouTube following or membership of about 30 million people, 3 crores of people. To compare me with any other YouTubers is to create a sense of humor or laughter, or to indulge in a small bit of derision. So there is no comparison whatsoever. I decided to do this for a very simple personal reason. I wanted to test out the moral, ethical alertness of the very small group of people with whom I'm happily associated through this, if you like, YouTube channel. I always call this a YouTube Sangamam, or a YouTube coming together of people. That's why I've given the name a temple of thoughts to this particular mode of expression that I have developed. Now, I have a fundamental thesis which I was trying to test out. Let me state that thesis up front. In my line of thought, the moral sensitivity, or if you like, the moral robustness, or if you like, the ethical corruption of an individual or an assemblage of people or a society or a nation can be easily measured, gauged, or ascertained by the extent to which what is good and what is beautiful comes to be resented by those who come into its proximity or become aware of it. This is a simple theory that I have. And to me, the best way to test this out was to say something nice and beautiful, something not usually done about Rahul Gandhi, who has been subjected to a long period of vilification and personal obloquy. I don't think there is any comparable instance in the history of Indian politics. People have been criticized, people have been calumniated, but not with the steadfastness and unwavering malice with which this young man has been vilified. So much so, an ambience of assumption has been very successfully created within which it's become a crime to say something good about him, even if that is true. Now, I consider that to be an alarming state of moral degeneration. It's a symptom of the pathology of a society, pathology of a people. I also consider this to be the acme or the zenith of moral cowardice, as well as slavery. Who is a slave? A slave is one who cannot do justice to his own conscience. A slave is one who cannot state the truth that he knows and is convinced about. A slave is one who has to fit his opinions with the dispositions of those around him, those who are powerful and those who control his life. A slave is one who cannot choose ethically, but has to simply abide by or conform to whatever is the ambient climate of opinion. So, as a teacher and a part-time thinker, if you like, this question is of extreme importance for me to ascertain what is the extent to which my fellow human beings are mentally and morally free. What is the degree of slavery that has taken possession of human perceptions, minds, the understanding of reality, so on and so forth. And as a Democrat, as someone who believes in the culture of democracy, I also wanted and still want to ascertain the degree of inequality that actually operates in the very tissue of life. Now, this being an important point, I have to explain this, and I crave your indulgence. Maybe 2-3 minutes, that's all. Now, democracy in theory swears by human equality, which is symbolized by the equality of votes, one man, one vote. I may be a pauper, but my vote will have the same value as the vote cast by Adani or Ambani. I may be a mentally retarded person, but my vote will have the same effect, the same worth as the vote cast by a Nobel laureate, and so on and so forth. So this is actually the creed of democracy, the creed of equality. But what people don't realize is that superimposed on this theory of equality is the terrible pressure of inequality. Now, since this is not talked about, please lend me your ears so that I may explain this to you, because this is of extreme importance that we attain clarity on these subtle issues. Let me put it this way. And please forgive me if I use religious tags, etc. This is only for illustrative purposes. Now, in terms of my identity, I'm a Christian. So I belong to one of the minority communities, a religiously minority community. Now, I have a neighbor. I'm just thinking hypothetically. I have a neighbor who is a Hindu. Now, he belongs to the majority community. Now, in terms of the value and the effect or potency of the votes that he and I cast, we are equal. But when it comes to the extent of freedom that we enjoy, we are terribly unequal. Being a member of the majority community, he is free to say what he wants, and particularly so if he happens to belong within the majority community to the political camp which has very successfully arrogated to itself the hegemony or the monopoly over the minority religious heritage as well as the majority religious heritage and identity. So, say the Sangh Parivar and BJP as its political wing claims exclusive monopoly over the identity of being a Hindu, the Hindu culture and Hindu nationalism. I'm just stating facts so that we can think objectively. Now, when it comes to any political issue, the degree of freedom available to me as a member of a religious minority is incomparably less, woefully less, as compared to the freedom and the authority available to a member of the majority community. And within the majority community, the particular political camp which is now ascendant or which controls and monopolizes the power. Now, this is true even in the way law operates. For example, it is assumed that a corrupt politician will enjoy immunity to consequences of his malfeasance if he switches loyalty from one party, whichever party it is, to the BJP. Now, there is a point there. There is a practical point there. Why? Because there is political inequality, there is the inequality of numbers, there is the inequality of power, there is the inequality of influence, the inequality of resources, so on and so forth. So while there is the reality, the theoretical, shall I say, the relic of equality in terms of two individuals as human beings, and in terms also of the votes that they cast, in all other respects, these two individuals are terribly unequal. And that inequality defines and on occasions destroys the equality that I am by the Constitution of India entitled to. It's a real problem. Maybe members of the majority community who have everything going for them will not understand the gravity of what I am saying. Maybe they will if they are sensitive, if they have the willingness to think about the realities of our times. So, theoretically, I entertain these notions. Now, I also need to test it out, because unless and until I test this out, it will remain within me only as a prejudice, as an apprehension, or a baseless, say, point of worry, or presumed inequality, which may not have anything to do with realities on the ground. How do I ascertain? How do I ascertain that I enjoy the same degree of freedom that members of the majority community, members of the dominant political party enjoy? Because if I have the same freedom, the same extent of freedom that everybody else has, then I belong to a healthy democracy. On the other hand, being a belonging to a religiously minority community and belonging really to no one in politics, politically a non-entity, and lacking powerful connections, layers of protection, so on and so forth, what is the extent of freedom of thought that I can enjoy? Surely this is a question that should bother anyone and everyone, or at least it should interest everyone. How do you know how free you are unless and until you test it out? So, what's the way I can test it out? The only mode that came into my mind is to say something good about Rahul Gandhi and the Gandhi-Nehru Parivar, if you like, Parivar, the most hated word in India, Parivar, which is profoundly ironic, because the BJP is the offspring of Sangh Parivar. Parivar. At the same time, Parivar politics is the most hated concept in India. But only if the Congress practices Parivar politics. But if the BJP does it, it's perfectly all right, which also illustrates this reality of inequality that I'm referring to. If you examine the list of ministers sworn in after the 2024 general elections, you will see that 22 out of the 72 odd ministers sworn in have the Parivar advantage, the dynastic advantage. Maybe many of them wouldn't have made the grade but for their dynastic qualifications. But that's all right, because in the political morality that exists today, there is real and brutal inequality between BJP and the Congress, BJP and any other party, and therefore no other party can claim parity with the BJP, members of the BJP or the power centers of the BJP in any respect. Therefore, one particular feature is repugnant if it is found in any of the opposition parties, but the same thing is normal and acceptable if it is practiced by the BJP. This goes for everything in our country at the moment. Corruption, for example. Corruption is anathema only if it's found in the opposition camps. I'm not pleading, or I'm not trying to defend corruption in any form. I believe that corruption is the crime against the nation. There should be zero tolerance for corruption. And when my Prime Minister in 2014 declared that India will be a zone of zero tolerance for corruption, my soul rejoiced. But I have to say, risking my life, that my expectations were actually belied. Because if your idea of political morality, of your commitment to creating a corruption-free society is only this, that a corrupt politician who should have been punished as per the law of the land, upon the instant, right away acquires immunity to legal consequences by switching loyalty to the BJP. Now, it's assumed that BJP, being a patriotic nationalist party, it is completely free of corruption, and therefore Anyone who seeks and finds refuge within the party must be an honest, clean man. But what about its past? The past which the spokesperson and the leaders of the BJP themselves damned, as in the case of Ajit Pawar, who was accused of embezzling public wealth to the tune of 70,000 crores, and about whom a gentleman like Fadnavis said that he deserves to do chakki piece, do hard labor in prison for the rest of his life. The moment he is admitted into the BJP, he becomes a clean man, because I'm trying to explain to you the logic of it as I understand. Because of the reality of inequality that democracy itself breeds. This is what I want to emphasize. I want you to know that there is this serious problem in democracy. Why? Because democracy functions in terms of inequality, though it swears by inequality. Why do I say that? The first past the post principle. The majority rules. Majority and minority, inequality. Power is predicated on inequality. Now, it is not merely that the party that wins the maximum number of seats in the Lok Sabha acquires the legitimacy to form the government. It does. But the point really is that the operating principle, there is inequality. Inequality of members in the Lok Sabha, or Rajya Sabha if you like, but not in the immediate context. That comes later. So, there is this reality, there is this sanctification, institutionalization of inequality, which is part of the dynamics of democracy. Now, why do we have to really become aware of this? We need to become aware of this because even though in the functioning of democracy, in the constitution of the center of power and the bastion of governance in democracy is relies entirely on inequality of numbers, members of Lok Sabha. Inequality as a practicing principle or a principle in practice is seriously harmful to the health of a society, to the freedom and dignity of human beings, to the health and wholeness of the country as a whole. So, on the one hand, there is equality, the equality of vote, but through the equality of votes cast, inequality of power is created, inequality of power blocks is created, the majority block corners all the power in the country, all the power. And of late, in the last 10 years, we have seen an intensification and an enlargement of that power. By the way, the instruments of the government are used like ED, CBI, income tax, so on and so forth. Everybody talks about it. I don't have to say a word about it. So, the journey begins on a note of equality, and that journey soon slithers into inequality and breeds inequality of power. And that inequality of power then enlarges itself and spreads into other aspects of the body politic. For example, the media begins to treat parties unequally, and the media cannot function in the national context if it does not practice inequality. And in a subtle way, the duty to practice inequality and the compulsion to treat people differently, unequally, becomes an integral part of the way democracy operates. Now, why should we recognize this? And I want to emphasize this with all the force I can muster. We must recognize this, not to despise democracy. That's not an option for us, because all said and done, democracy is the best of all possible modes of governance. Of that I have no doubt or dispute. So, this is the better of all evils. We have to live with democracy, But democracy has this problem. Therefore, what are we to do? We have to become aware of this problem, and as citizens and as civil society members, as thinkers, as opinion makers, etc., we have to try and minimize this harm. And we have to try and control the extent to which inequality actually begins to undermine the health and wholeness of a society. Actually, democratic institutions were put in place in order to ensure this. For example, the doctrine of the separation of powers, which guarantees autonomy or independence of the judiciary, independence of the parliament. The executive cannot control the parliament. But there are situations in which this doctrine of the separation of powers will not operate. And when political inequality and therefore the inequality of power sharing becomes too acute, the inevitable result is that these very institutions which are meant to hold the exercise of power within healthy bounds, they also collapse, or they are made to collapse. And in such a context, the responsibility comes heavily upon the citizens, if at all, to stand in the gap, as it were. And the good thing is that we are beginning to see some symptoms of happening in the country. So I had all these thoughts at the back of my mind in deciding to do a video in which I highlighted some of the good, just one point of goodness about Rahul Gandhi, just to see how this would be received. I'm glad to say that the negative reaction, the angry reaction, the vituperative reaction, and the positive reaction are more or less matched. And therefore, I want to gladly report to everyone that our society is in good health. Whether the political aspect or political structure of this society is in equal health, I don't know. This is something that I have to wait and see. We all have to wait and see. And in this context, we have actually reasons to feel happy and relieved that the results of the 2024 elections has created a political scenario in which the imbalance of power has been minimized, and therefore this will have a positive bearing on the quality and extent of freedoms available to citizens irrespective of caste, creed, color, religion, etc., all labels of discrimination. And therefore, the anxiety that existed, the anxiety felt by many people prior to the recently concluded elections, that the ideals stated in the preamble to the Constitution of India will be undermined, that anxiety has now been virtually allayed, and a new air of freedom is now spreading through the subcontinent. And I want us to become aware of this, because the problem with the psychology of fear is that even when the catalyst for fear disappears, fear lingers. As a result of which, people who continue to languish in that state refuse to realize and feel that there is a change for the better in the air. And therefore, as far as they are concerned, these good things are as good as not having happened. So, great possibilities will be wasted if the people, the society at large, the citizens of this country, continue to harbor the old mentality or continue to suffer from the hangover of the pre-2024 elections. I think God has done wonders to the soul of India. God loves India. And I see the hand of God at work in the way things have panned out. And I'm sure that everyone, including Sri Narendra Modi and his cabinet colleagues, will realize that the destiny of a nation, and a destiny of a nation as great as India is, destiny of a nation which is home to 145 crores, 1.45 billion people, is a tremendously important agenda for God. No one should belittle this. No one should take this for granted. So something great has happened, and it's good for us to become aware of this. So I had all these things at the back of my mind in doing a small video, and I request my brothers and sisters to realize that when I decide to do things, believe you me, I don't do things out of mercenary motives. I have no need to. I'm a thinker. I'm in love with the people of India. I'm a patriot to the last cell of my body. Therefore, I would like to ascertain the truth of my country. Where is my country at this point in time? What is the state of its health or sickness? And is there something that I can do in order to heal what is sick and to celebrate what is healthy and wholesome? And is there something that I can do to make people more and more aware of the greatness and the glory of India? India is a very special, unique land. Just to give you one example, Protestants and Catholics fight in various parts of the world, Ireland being a good example. Europe witnessed decades of bloodshed between Catholics and Protestants. Do they fight in India? No. The same thing is true about the various sects within Islam. India is a land of peace, and people have to work very hard to ruin that heritage, corrupt the soul of India, and to inject the poison of hatred and divisiveness. And I believe that there is a kind of divine intervention to correct this trend. And if this divine direction is understood by people, then we can look forward with hope and a keen expectation that great good will come out of the results of the recently concluded elections. So my concern is really not Rahul Gandhi. My concern is not the Gandhi Nehru family. I have great appreciation for them. I don't want to conceal this one bit. But my concern ultimately is the people of India. And to the extent that I understand Priyanka, Rahul, and Sonia, I have no doubt at all that their ultimate concern is India. And so it must be for everyone. We must love our country, cherish our country, and daily thank God for the greatness and nobility of this country, about which thinkers in foreign lands have never stopped to wonder. I commend to you a tiny volume, Max Muller's book, India, What It May Teach Us. It's a set of lectures that he delivered to the ICS probationers who were taken to London, who used to be taken to London for this training, and Max Muller used to deliver these lectures. Please read that book. You can easily download it from the net, free of cost, and see the admiration that people have for the greatness of India. And we in our time must be good and faithful custodians of this incomparable heritage. That's the only reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Thank you, and I wish all of you great days ahead. And I wish the Narendra Modi government, the NDA government, all success. May they have guidance from on high, that they may govern with justice and with a preferential option for the poor and the downtrodden. And to the extent that they do so, the blessing of the Almighty will be upon them. The denial of the poor is the denial of God. I have nothing more to say. Thank you.